I would like to welcome you all to this very special Interfaith Iftar event organized by the Brookline Muslim Friends and co-hosted by St. Paul's Brookline. I am deeply, deeply thankful to the Brookline Muslim Friends community. They have made a tremendous effort to prepare for this evening's program, and they have given all of us their time and energy with unwavering kindness and generosity. I especially want to thank Rana and Faiza for inviting St. Paul's to participate in this iftar and for their amazing leadership. Where are you guys? Faiza is in the back over there, and Rana is in the kitchen. Rana's right here, yep. So thank you. And for all of our amazing volunteers from both St. Paul's and the Brookline Muslim Friends. If I could just offer a few words of reflection on the significance of this kind of a gathering, and then I'll pass my mic on to Rana for the Quran recitation and explanation. Ibu Patel, a Muslim leader in our country, one of my favorite writers and organizers around religious diversity and civic pluralism, he writes this: human beings were meant to be diverse, and they were meant to live together. Love between people of different identities is not only possible, but necessary. Love between people of different identities is not only possible, but necessary. This is a spiritual principle. This truth is founded on the spiritual genius of all three Abrahamic faiths: Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. In Surah 49, verse 13 of the Quran, it says, "O humankind, truly we created you from a male and a female, and we made you peoples and tribes, that you may come to know one another." In Isaiah 56, verse 6 through 7 in the Hebrew Bible, we read, "My house will be called a house of prayer for all peoples." In Acts chapter 10, 34 to verse 35 of the New Testament, Peter proclaims, "I now realize how true it is that God does not show favoritism, but accepts from every nation the one who fears God and does what is right." In each of our faiths, there is a clear recognition that we all belong to God. Our faith traditions are distinct, with its unique beliefs, practices, and outlooks, and that is important for us to acknowledge. Yet, we also share so much in common as spiritual kin. Today, when there is so much hatred and extremism in the world, it is all the more important for us to come together to form real friendships across religious differences, and learn how our distinct faith traditions share fundamental universal values of compassion, love, and justice. We are all called by God to build a compassionate and just society that reflects God's will. So thank you for coming, and thank you, Brookline Muslim Friends, for giving us the opportunity to follow and do God's will.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and peace be upon you all. Thank you for joining us here tonight as we gather for our 7th annual BMF Iftar. On behalf of Brookline Muslim Friends, I would like to extend our gratitude to Reverend Wan Jae Her, and St. Paul's Church for graciously allowing us to co-host this event tonight. Ramadan is a time of reflection, compassion, and gratitude, a month that reminds us the values of patience and generosity. As we come together to break our fast, we are reminded that iftar is not just a meal, but an opportunity to bring communities together. It is a time to appreciate our blessings and to extend kindness to one another. We are truly honored by your presence here this evening, and we hope this gathering strengthens our shared sense of understanding, fellowship, and goodwill. May this blessed month of Ramadan bring peace and blessings to our heart and harmony to our community and to our neighbors. Please join me as I welcome Hagar Dilshad, who will be our MC for this evening.
Good evening, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon all of you. Let me be the third to welcome you to the 7th annual Interfaith Iftar in Brookline. We're so happy to see such a packed house, and it's beautiful to look around and see so many familiar faces and faces we have yet to meet. Appreciate that you took the time out of your day to come and spend the evening with us and break fast with us. Appreciate all of the elected officials that are here, school committee members, town meeting members, and all of our friends and neighbors that have made the time to come tonight. My name is Hagar Dilshad. I'm a mother of 2 children. Both are daughters, and they attend Baker School and Brookline High School. I'm married to Dr. Khalid Ismail, who's right there, and I'm a physician assistant, and I'm from Egypt and Palestine and Iran. Thank you for joining us once again. We are going to start off our program by a reading of the Quran. So I'd like to welcome Ziad Ghafour, and the translation will be read by Sophia Siddiqa.
Assalamu alaikum. So I'm Ziad Ghafour.
I'm Sophia Siddiqa.
So we're going to take you through 4 verses in the Quran. So I'll do the Arabic version and Sophia will do the English. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful.
شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان.
Ramadan is the month in which the Quran was revealed as a guide for humanity with clear proofs of guidance in the decisive authorities.
إنا أوحينا إليك كما أوحينا إلى نوح والنبيين من بعده وأوحينا إلى إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق ويعقوب والأسباط وعيسى وأيوب ويونس وهارون وسليمان وآتينا داود زبورا.
Indeed, we have sent revelation to you, O Prophet, as we sent revelation to Noah and the prophets after him. We also sent revelation to Abraham, Ismail, Isaac, Jacob, and his descendants, as well as Jesus, Job, Jonah, Aaron, and Solomon. And to David we gave the Psalms.
ورسلا قد قصصناهم عليك من قبل ورسلا لم نقصصهم عليك وكلم الله موسى تكليما.
There are messengers whose stories we have told you already and others we have not. And to Moses, God spoke directly.
رسلا مبشرين ومنذرين لئلا يكون للناس على الله حجة بعد الرسل وكان الله عزيزا حكيما.
All were messengers delivering good news and warnings, so humanity should have no excuse before God after the coming of the messengers. And God is almighty, all-wise.
صدق الله العظيم.
God Almighty has spoken the truth.
Thank you guys, that was beautifully read. Now it's my pleasure to introduce one of my oldest friends in Brookline, Mona Moefi, and she is going to take us through a segment called Ramadan and what it means to me.
Our aging eyes need some light on these papers. Oh, not yet, not yet. Iqra, the Arabic command to read, beamed from the darkness and shook Muhammad in his solitude. I cannot read, Muhammad responded, shaken. Iqra. Once again, the angel Gabriel invoked the soon-to-be prophet one more time to recite God's words after him. I cannot read, he again responded. Read in the name of your Lord, the Creator, the angel Gabriel continued. Disoriented and shaken, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, began to recite these first words of the Quran. The year was 610 AD. The place was Hira cave just outside of Mecca. The month was Ramadan. For years before becoming a prophet, Muhammad would go sit in solitude and reflect on the world around him. The tribalism, the corruption, and idolatry prevalent at the time could not be what was intended in this world, he thought. He wondered about creation and what could have brought all this into existence. Although Arabia at that time was a highly tribal culture, Muhammad was well loved by all, known as trustworthy, or al-Amin. People used to leave their valuable goods with him for safekeeping. His wife Khadija, a businesswoman who had hired him to lead trade caravans for her to Syria, later proposed to him, having seen how honest, kind, and trustworthy he was. She was the first to convert to Islam. She believed in him right away. She comforted him when he rushed down from Hira that day, holding him close and telling him that it must be true. She took him to see her cousin, a Christian named Waraqa ibn Nawfal, to convey what had happened and get his opinion. Waraqa confirmed to him that he believed Muhammad was a prophet of God, that this was a continuation of the message that had been sent down before to Abraham, to Moses, to Jesus, peace be upon them all, and to many other prophets and messengers. Muhammad would be the last of a line of messengers urging humankind to accept the oneness of God. Allah, the word for the God in Arabic, should be worshipped alone. At the time, tribes in Arabia worshipped many gods. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was brought to renew the message of Abraham and humankind's connection to one Creator. While prophets before had been given miracles, Abraham, a sheep to slaughter instead of his son, Moses, the 10 Commandments, Jesus healing the blind and lepers, the Prophet Muhammad's miracle was revelation of the Quran itself, a holy book of God's words revealed directly to humankind for all time. That is what Muslims believe, and that is the beauty and miracle of Ramadan. In the same way that Islam came to reshape society, Ramadan comes each year to give us the opportunity to reshape ourselves. Ramadan is a time for extra worship, including reading of the Quran. Many Muslims try to read the book from cover to cover throughout the month, reflecting on its words and absorbing its message with intentionality. We are encouraged to give more charity during this month, treat others with kindness, and resolve interpersonal disputes. We take stock of ourselves to make sure our spiritual compass still points north and to help us chart paths towards becoming better people. It is not just a matter of fasting from food and water. It is a matter of starving the ego to feed the soul. Personally, after Friday prayer yesterday, as I looked upon the sea of Muslims flooding out from the mosque, all walks of life, I was so overwhelmed with emotion that my daughter looked at me and asked, "Mama, are you crying?" I was indeed holding back tears. I was reminded of verse 49:13 of the Holy Quran that was read earlier by our pastor that reads, quote, "I have created you nations and tribes so that you may get to know one another. Verily, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous. We are here together to break down these barriers. As the world once again is seduced by the forces of tribalism or nationalism or whatever you want to call it, we as neighbors and friends must do our best to see the shared beauty in our community, in our common faiths and humanity. So for me personally, this Ramadan and every Ramadan, what I'm most grateful for is the ability to sit quietly and in community to appreciate the beauty of this message. I appreciate all of you that we are here together sharing in this moment, reaching out to one another so that we may know one another and understand one another better. Thank you for being here with us this evening, and thank you to our gracious hosts for welcoming us into your beautiful house of worship. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you this short video put together by Fariha Chowdhury. Thank you, Fariha. I don't know where you are. By members of our Muslim community, highlighting and sharing the many things they love about Ramadan. Enjoy.
What I'm looking forward to most about Ramadan this year is having an opportunity to disconnect and reflect and focus on what really matters. And I haven't really had that opportunity since my father passed away in November. And my father, even though you're not obligated to fast until you reach the age of puberty, he elected, such was his faith, to fast beginning the ages of 8 to 80. And this year, I'm looking forward to not just fulfilling my obligation, but remembering my father as I fast.
Khan family, what do you look forward to most about Ramadan?
I look forward to eating food with my family.
Okay, I was going to say the same thing, iftar dinner with my family.
Also the same, but I love getting iftar dinner with my family, but also my Muslim friends, and kind of getting to see them, spend time with them, and have the whole community come together.
And for me, same thing, but also I appreciate suhoor in the mornings. I find it a peaceful time.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name is Rana Mumtaz, and the most beautiful part of Ramadan to me is the Tarawih prayers. It is when we go to the masjid in the evening and we listen to the entire Quran, all 30 chapters being recited from memory by the Imam over this entire beautiful month.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name is Athar Mumtaz. I look forward to recharging myself during the month of Ramadan. Try to be more kind, more generous, and be more grateful for all the blessings that Allah has given to me.
Hi everyone, I'm Ismail.
And I'm Tasneem. What I love most about Ramadan is the fact that I can relate to every other Muslim in the world that's fasting, and it really helps me connect with the Muslim community in general.
Ramadan for me is a time of reflection and recalibration. It's a time for spring cleaning of the heart. There's a beautiful metaphor from a Muslim scholar named Al-Ghazali who described the heart or the soul as a mirror that was meant to reflect the light of God. But over the course of the year in our day-to-day life, our egos can leave all sorts of residues on that mirror, things like impatience or anger, vanity. Ramadan is a chance to pause our everyday life and to live more intentionally and to do the work of introspection to wipe that mirror clean so that we can become better people and be better reflections of God's light on earth.
Girls, what is the biggest takeaway from Ramadan each year?
My biggest takeaway from Ramadan each year is basically discipline, and I feel like a lot of times throughout the month there are like foods I want to eat or I'm presented the opportunity to eat, and it has been practiced saying no to those things. So.
My biggest takeaway from Ramadan is like the importance of having like friends and family and community around you, because when you're with people all the time, it makes it better or easier.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name is Sahar, and my favorite part of Ramadan is the sense of community. Each night, I break my fast with family and friends that I otherwise wouldn't see too often. Even during weeknights, we all gather at the mosque, and during the month of Ramadan, no one breaks their fast alone.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, I'm Shazad Mumtaz, and in terms of what a non-Muslim friend can do to support a Muslim who's fasting during Ramadan, I feel like there's a common misconception that it has to be something grand and over the top, but the reality is that when we're fasting, we just want to function as if it's a normal day. So just being mindful, just being thoughtful, just being supportive. Obviously, you know, it's very habitual to ask if someone would like to eat or drink, and if you do that to someone who is fasting, it's not a big deal at all. Just being mindful that they are fasting and to not do it repetitively. Obviously, if you forget, it's okay. But I think the main important thing is just being present for them, being supportive. If you're planning on doing something that's revolving food, obviously we want to function as if it's a normal day if we are fasting, but just being mindful that if there is a chance to do something revolving food, offering to do it after, you know, once we break fast and once we do iftar, that's probably one of the most beneficial things that they can do.
Every Ramadan, I'm reminded people think it's about being hungry or losing weight. Fasting or abstaining from food or drink during the day is much deeper. It's a pause, a reset, a chance to be a better version of yourself. I think something that stays with me the most is the giving. If you can afford it, give 2.5% to those in need. And that's a saying I carry all year. It's always better to be the one giving than the one receiving.
Ramadan means catching up with friends and family and focusing on the importance of being grateful.
Hello from Miami. We are about to leave to go back to Boston. Ramadan starts tomorrow, and for us, Jamshed and I and our family, what it means is that Jamshed and I make it back home and be there for the entire Ramadan for the evening prayers. That brings us so much peace and tranquility. For kids, it means that you need to come home for Eid, and they very happily do to be with their friends and family. And that's like second Thanksgiving for all of us. So that's what Ramadan means to us.
Thank you, Fariha. That was so wonderful. Great job editing that video. And I'm just so impressed with how many teens and young adults actually were in that video. And I don't know how you got your kids to do that. I did not succeed. Okay, so next up we have our annual fashion show. People always comment on the ethnic attire that people are wearing, so we want to give you a chance to take a closer look. The clothing worn is by the members of the host families, some of them children, and this year some adults will also be joining them. So please make sure that you're giving a very warm applause to everybody walking and showing off their fabulous clothes. Just give us 1 second to get organized and get our music going. Okay, so first off, we're gonna have Khadija walk with her daughter, Sophia Siddiqa. No one knows the order that they will be called upon, so it's gonna be a surprise. All right, and next I will call up Masu and her children. Masu's gonna moderate the panel, so you'll see her later. She's walking with Sana and Aiden. Don't they look amazing? Yes. Yes, walk slower. They want to see your outfits more. Okay, and now let's have Khadi walk up with Zaina and Dia. Look at these really beautiful clothes from Senegal. Look at them. Dia, where's your famous twirl? No? Not doing it this, yes. Okay, there we go. All right, and now we'll have Sophia and Maya. These are my children, and their dad has been voluntold. All right, and then where is Faiza? Did she try to disappear? Faiza Khan, you're up. Faiza Khan has no children at home, so she's walking with her friend Rana and Fariha. Okay. Thank you, ladies. By the way, Faiza is a candidate for the school committee, and we're very proud of her. Okay, now we're gonna have the Egyptian power couple, Mona and Ismail. You should not be dancing. Thank you, guys. Mona and Ismail, very traditional Egyptian clothes. S was in theater before, so. Okay, did we miss anyone else except just you? Okay, last but not least, Marina and Rayana. Marina is wearing her own design and her own clothing that she makes, if you can imagine, from Chechnya. So beautiful. Thank you all for participating in the fashion show. We hope you enjoyed it.
Okay, I'm taking oldest friend privileges right now. For the record, we all said no to doing this. This is called the art of persuasion.
Or bullying. Okay. Thank you all so much for participating and following along. Next, we have our panel discussion. We have a really great panel together. I'm going to call up Masu Haq Khan to moderate the panel. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. If I could have my interfaith leaders join me right now. My name is Masu Haq Khan, and I have the pleasure and the privilege of moderating today's interfaith discussion. A little bit about me is that I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. My parents are from South India. When they came to the United States, they helped found the Muslim community in Ohio beginning in the late 60s. I've worked in the fields of law, education, and career development, and I've lived in Brookline, where I've been an active school and community volunteer for almost 9 years now. I'm married to my husband, Badr, or Badar, depending on where you hail from. He himself hails from Belfast, Northern Ireland. We have 3 wonderful children who were born in Connecticut, London, and Houston, respectively. Our oldest is a graduate of Brookline High and the Heath Hayes School. The other, and she's now at NYU, the other is a junior at Windsor, and my third is a 5th grader at Fessenden. Today, we have 3 amazing faith leaders with us who are going to talk with us about the commonalities between Christianity, Judaism, and Islam in order to really support the theme of our 7th annual Brookline Muslim Friends Iftar. And that theme this year is the building community by furthering understanding. So allow me to introduce our panelists. To represent the Muslim faith, we have Imam Munib or Muhyiddin Khan. Munib is a technology executive with over 45 years of dedicated association to the Islamic Center of Boston in Wayland. Respected for his religious knowledge, incredible personality, beautiful recitation of the Adhan, and his compassion, intelligence, and the care he exhibits in virtually every interaction he undertakes, we at Brookline Muslim Friends felt he was the perfect choice to serve as our imam, answering questions about the Muslim faith tonight. Passionate about building in every sense, Munib thrives on forging connections between people, developing innovative hardware and software, and engaging in creative pursuits like home reno, woodworking, and music. He lives in Belmont with his lawyer wife, Liz, and 2 wonderfully spirited sons. Welcome, Munib. Next, to represent the Christian faith today, and our host here is the Reverend Dr. Juan J. Herr. The Reverend Dr. Herr became rector of St. Paul's in 2024. He He was ordained as a priest in 2000 at his then home Diocese of Ohio. Subsequently, he served as an interim priest, priest in charge, area missioner, young people's ministry coordinator, and assisting priest in parishes in Los Angeles, Seoul, San Francisco, Boston, and Cincinnati, Ohio. After several years of parish ministry, he wanted to explore the connections between Christian contemplative spirituality and Buddhism, and completed a PhD program in comparative theology at Boston College. Reverend Herr has taught courses, published articles, and presented extensively on Buddhist Christian comparative theology, interreligious dialogue, and theology of the body while working at the College of Holy Cross, Boston, and Xavier University. And to represent, last but certainly not least, to represent the Jewish faith, we have Rabbi Claudia Kremen, who is the senior rabbi for Temple Beth Zion. Rav Claudia, the first Chilean-born woman to be ordained to the rabbinate, grew up in Santiago, and after her graduation from high school, moved to Argentina, where she began to engage deeply with Judaism, both as a learner and as a teacher. She moved to Israel in 1996, studied at the Schechter Institute of Jewish Studies, and was ordained in Jerusalem in 2002. As a recently ordained rabbi, Rav Claudia became the Israeli Rabbinic Fellow at B'nai Jeshurun, am I pronouncing that right? Okay, in New York City. When she moved to the US, Rav Claudia became the director of the Jewish Studies program at the Jewish Community Day School in Watertown. Rav Claudia joined TBZ in 2007 as the assistant rabbi, becoming the first woman senior rabbi of TBZ in 2019. Rav Claudia was president of the New England Rabbinical Assembly from 2012 to 2014, and she's married to Rabbi Eben Leder, who is on the faculty of the Rabbinical School of Hebrew College. They have two daughters, Alma and Aria. Please welcome Rav Claudia. So, I'm really excited for this conversation today. It's different. If those of you who've been here for prior panels, we usually have people from Brookline who are Muslim speak to you about what their experience is like. But again, we're mixing it up, and we're hoping that we can show today how many commonalities we all share. I'm going to head straight into our belief systems. So I guess the first question I have, and I think I'll just direct it to you, Rev. Claudia, is why are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam called the Abrahamic faiths? And what does Abraham represent in your faith tradition today?
It's wonderful to be here. I was saying to Reverend 1J that this is my third time in the last 2 months here at church, at this church. So I should be a little careful what's going on in my life. And also, I just want to say, I said this at services. I came directly from Shabbat services at our temple, that it felt very special, very committed to interfaith work. Both Rabbi Leah Carno and I walked from synagogue right now. So we walk on Shabbat, because that's our practice, to walk on Shabbos to church for a Muslim holiday. So really, really living up the interfaith practice here. So Abraham, as we call him in Hebrew, is really the patriarch of the Jewish people. It is where the whole story of the Jewish people starts. Now, I've spent a little time reading the Quran and realizing that our stories are very, very similar. So we just changed the name of which is the son that takes the story. But several years ago, I gave a sermon comparing actually the Akedat Yitzchak, the sacrifice of Isaac, with the sacrifice of Ishmael in the scripture of Quran, really realizing that we had the same story, just to a different son. So just to start from that, when I realized that, to realize how our faith have a very similar story. And I want to say about Abraham, there is so much I could say, but I want to mention 4 things about Abraham that are very core to Jewish practice, to Jewish tradition. One is how his story starts, which is with the words Lech Lecha, go for yourself, this idea of a wandering Jew, a wandering person that goes into a journey of seeker. He's a seeker looking for finding the divine. That is the beginning of the story. The second part is this idea of, in Hebrew, achnasat orchim, welcoming the guests, which is what Abraham and Sarah do in their tent when the angels walk in to their tent to give them the news of the birth of Isaac in our tradition. The third is Akedat Yitzchak, the almost sacrifice of Isaac, or the binding of Isaac, which speaks about faith and the faith in the divine and the calling of the divine. And last but not least, no, I did not do them in the chronological order, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, where Abraham stands for justice and disagrees with God in God's way of deciding to destroy the cities, saying, Abraham saying to God, the one that does justice, I would say, tzedek lo yaseh mishpat, the one that believes in justice is not going to do justice at this moment, and that moment trying to convince God not to destroy the cities because perhaps there is some goodness in that city. So that's 4 core stories. There is much more to say. I do want to mention, and kind of a segue to my Muslim brother here, that there are parts of the story of the Abraham that are very problematic. In our scripture, the story of Abraham is one that cannot deal with Ishmael, that needs to send him off. He sends off Ishmael and Hagar. Actually, the one that has a problem is not Abraham, it's Sarah, the wife. And Abraham follows God and Sarah's call to send off his other son, Ishmael, and Hagar. And that is perhaps the beginning of the rapture. But I think part of the work of working together is to name it and to recognize where the challenges begin, where is the rapture, and perhaps to talk and to learn together and to realize that at the end our stories come together. Isaac and Ishmael, the sons of Abraham, divided by a lot, come together to bury their father when he dies. And that is the story. That is really the story that we have to hold in these times.
So first, I want to say what incredible imposter syndrome I am having sitting up here with 3 really well-educated people, which I'm clearly not, but I found out why I'm here. So there's this little-known ordinance in Brookline that when you have a panel discussion, there is a limit in how much spectacular hair you can have on the screen. So it's obvious to me now why I was invited to come to this event. This is what God gives us, right? All right, so Abraham, that was really incredibly beautifully put, Rabbi. So I think really just the few touches that I would want to add to it is that, in Islam, Abraham is such a significant figure because he represents courage, he represents humility, and he represents devotion, right? He left his homeland to go to a faraway place. He stood up against the prevailing sentiment of idolatry at the time. He made the biggest sacrifice that one could make in sacrificing his son. So in Islam, those tenets, right, combined with our 5 pillars of Islam, really form the core principles of what it is that we believe, what it is that we live our lives to be. And Abraham is such a wonderful example and figure in a long line of prophets that came to give us the message and to give us that direction.
Thank you so much. My hair used to look more like yours, by the way. I used to shave it. Well, Abraham, his importance in Christianity is probably less prominent than in Islam and Judaism. But he is looked at as a prime exemplar of genuine faith in God. And so the person in Christian, in the New Testament, what we call the New Testament, the person who talks about Abraham the most is actually St. Paul, the namesake of our church. And in his letters, Paul talks about looking to Abraham as somebody who had genuine faith, and that faith was what made him righteous before God's eyes. And that being made righteous by faith is the portal of entry for Christians who are not Jewish to become part of the covenant promise. So he has this image of Christians, the Christian community, who are Gentiles, being grafted onto the tree of Israel. And therefore, we must reverence our participation in the covenant of Israel. And this has been lost, unfortunately, in much of Christian history, because our history has been one of anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism, and that's been a work of ours to really look deeply at that and correct it. And I think in that light, Abraham gains even more importance for us today as we look back on our past critically, try to rectify our mistakes, and forge relationships of solidarity and understanding.
The next question I'm going to ask is a tough one, but if you had to summarize the guiding tenets of your faith in just one or two sentences, what would they be?
I told Masu that I don't know if I can summarize anything, but I'll say two things. One is, whenever someone tells you Judaism says, they don't know anything about Judaism. There is, and I'm very serious, there is no such a thing about one view in Judaism. Judaism has many views about almost everything. So it is very important. So if you are not Jewish and a Jew tells you this is what Judaism says, ask some more questions. But if I have to summarize, I will start with the beginning of the book of Genesis, B'Tselem Elohim, that every human being was created in God's image. I would put that at the center of everything.
I'd say this one's actually pretty easy, even for me who has an epically huge mouth. That for Muslims, every day in every one of our prayers, in becoming Muslim to begin with, the basic tenet of Islam is belief that there is only one God and that Muhammad is his messenger, right? And if I was to say one more sentence about that, I would say that belief in one God isn't just the monotheistic appreciation that there is but one God. There is no association with anyone else with that God. It's acting in that belief. And it's also, in that acting in that belief, having the Prophet Muhammad as the perfect example of how we are to practice that faith.
I think I would say God is love, as it's written in the first letter of John. And to love God means to love one's neighbor.
Okay, we're going to move on to prayer. What role does prayer play in forming a relationship with God in your tradition? How often do you do it? Is it a daily practice, multiple times a day? And what do you believe ritual prayers bring to people of your faith? Who would like to start?
Well, prayer is essential, and there's different forms of prayer. There's prayer as conversation with God, making petitions, giving praise and thanksgiving. And then there's what's called, commonly called contemplative prayer, where we are entering into an ever deeper union with God beyond words and all images. So prayer is at the heart of our faith, because it's a way to, obviously, to draw near to God. But more than that, it's to become what God wants us to become. The act of creation, from Christian perspective, did not begin and end as an event in Genesis. It is something that continues moment by moment. The very fact that we are alive and are breathing and can have this incredibly rich life as a human person, all of that is due to the ongoing activity of God's creation right now. And therefore, prayer is us connecting consciously to the gift of that life, which in Christian language we call grace, moment by moment by moment. And that goes beyond words. And because we are always a recipient of this enormous grace, what in Jewish tradition is called chesed, the divine favor or mercy that is poured out upon all human beings and all creation every single instant of time, our response to that is thanksgiving and praise. And that's how we connect prayer with worship in public.
Thank you for that, Reverend. So, in the 5 basic pillars of Islam, the first is what I just mentioned, the belief that there is only but one God and that Muhammad is his messenger. And the very second pillar is that of salat in Arabic, or prayer. And it's an obligation upon all Muslims to pray 5 times a day. And it took me, I would say, the first 25 years of my life before I could begin to appreciate prayer and what it's bringing to us. But prayer, as well as the other 4 other pillars of Islam, is both uniquely personal. It's your relationship with God those 5 times a day, your connection in a direct manner. But it's also deeply communal, because prayer in congregation brings more what they would call sawab, or bring more credit, right? So you are encouraged to pray in congregation. And when I say it took me a really long time to appreciate what prayer did for me, it began for me in my mid-20s, where prayer and having to do it 5 times a day transitioned from more of a childhood obligation to more of an appreciation of what it brought me. God prescribes this amongst, for all of us, for devotion to him and recognition of him, but it also brings us that deep spiritual sense as well. And 5 times a day prayer, which happens on a daily basis, also extends to other types of prayer, other times of year. One of the things in the video that we heard some people talk about was the congregational prayer that happens every evening, where they recite for longer periods of time in a larger congregation every night during the night of Ramadan. And that sense of belonging amongst a community, but also having that direct one-on-one connection, I think is something that's really unique and wonderful about prayer in Islam.
Thank you. We have so much in common too. In Jewish tradition, the obligation, the commitment, and traditional practice is 3 times a day, not 5 times a day. Every day, not only on Shabbat. I know most of the people here in Brookline know about Shabbat, about our Saturday practice, but actually our practice is daily, 3 times a day, also a set prayers. And in the same idea, you can do them by yourself, but you get more credit if you do it in community. In community is 10 people, and there are certain prayers you can only do if you have the 10 people. That includes the mourner's Kaddish, the prayer we say when we are in mourning, and this is when someone is in mourning for a loved one. You cannot do it by yourself, you have to do it in community. And we have a whole ritual of 11 months of saying this prayer after someone passes away. We also cannot read from the Torah, from our scripture, from the scroll, unless there is a minyan, 10 adults meaning after bar bat mitzvah, 13 years old. Children. So we also have a set prayers in our community, really believing that gratitude is a muscle, is a practice that we have to do daily, all the time, especially in times of so much suffering, to remind ourselves of the blessings in our lives. Our prayers also include praise and also ask what we ask from God. We do not ask for things on Shabbat. On Shabbat, we only do the gratitude and the praise to rest from the work and let God rest a little bit from all our needs, to a little bit. But prayer is very much at the center of our practice. It's definitely at the center of my own personal practice, and in our community at TBZ, prayer is very much, intentional prayer becomes something very important. And for this, I would say that there are 2 concepts in Jewish prayer that are about the structure and the intentionality. One can pray all the words, all the structures of the prayer and be like totally fine. But some of us will say that's not enough without the intentionality of the prayer. So the work, the hardest work, is to hold both what we call in Hebrew keva and kavanah, the practice itself and the intention within the prayer practice. We also have prayer for everything. We have a blessing for every time we eat any food. Every time we see a rainbow, when you see a friend you haven't seen in 30 days or in 12 months, when a storm comes, we have a blessing for everything that you can ever imagine. We have a blessing for, I remember giving birth to my first child, and I was so high on whatever drugs they gave me at the hospital that my first question to my spouse was, what blessing I'm supposed to say? Because that is at the core. We say a blessing for everything, and we have ritualized a blessing for everything. And it's pretty cool to have these blessings at hand for anything, and there is a tradition that you, to try to do 100 blessings a day. If you pray 3 times a day and do all your blessings on your food, it's very easy to do it. But that's kind of a thing. Can you bless 100 times a day? So that's what we try to do.
Wow, that's so interesting. I mean, if I could ad-lib here, I will say, like, one thing that struck me was that whenever we do our 5 prayers a day, we have an intention before we say the prayer, just very similarly. We also have something called du'as, which are, it's not necessarily a particular blessing, but when you are asking for something, for instance, when you're in a terrible situation of trouble or grief, there are specific prayers that are called du'as, and they're du'as for everything that you can actually implore, for specific help in that particular arena. So that's fascinating. Moving on to rituals. What are your faith's rituals surrounding the birth of a baby?
I guess first, quick question for you, Reverend Hart. Were you told that we could have notes? Because these guys have notes. And we don't have any notes, so I'm holding that against you, Masu. This one's a little tough for me because being South Asian and growing up, as an immigrant with immigrant parents, it's tough for me to discern what are the cultural versus what are the religious traditions. So I will share what my family did, which I believe are both cultural and religious traditions. The first is most definitely religious, that when a baby is born, the first thing the baby should hear is the call to prayer, or the adhan. So that's one tradition. And you'll hear the call to prayer a little bit later today as well. The second tradition is that within the first 7 days, the child is given a name. So that's another tradition. The third, and this one I'm not entirely sure of whether it's cultural or religious, but we shave the baby's head. And all of the hair is weighed, and that amount of gold is given to charity. So it's another tradition that I know of. Yeah, it is religious, right? Yes, okay, thank you, Masu. Same for boys and girls. Yeah, the thing that's not the same for boys and girls, I think everybody knows. So I'll leave that one. Yes.
That's beautiful. I think broadly within the Christian tradition, I think I need to also say exactly what both of you have articulated in different ways, is that there is no single Christianity. There are only Christianities. And in the West, we think like Christians must be Catholics, Protestants, and Orthodox. But the oldest Christian churches are churches in Syria, parts of the world that we Americans don't have much contact with. And there are remnants of Christian traditions and communities in East Asia, and of course a rich Christian tradition in India. So I just want to make that point, and also the customs around birth of a child will differ according to which cultural location we're referring to. I think having said all that, and just acknowledging the richness of many ways that people and cultures observe and practice when it comes to celebrating the birth of a child, there are a couple things that we do in Christian churches generally. First, there is a practice of offering prayers and a blessing for the mother during the pregnancy. That is something that we are invited to do. The most important thing that we do after the birth of a child is to baptize the child. And the baptism of a child happens in different ways. In our church, we have a special service where we ask people who are examples of faith, whom the parents of that child trust, to become godparents for that child or sponsors. And these people are meant to accompany this child throughout their lives, to be people who can be mentors and who can teach by word and example, more importantly by example, what it means to embody the love of Christ. And so these people will come celebrate the baptism with the child and their families, and then in the service, that child will be taken to some kind of vessel filled with water, and that strange-looking thing with the wooden triangle on top, that's where we do it here. It's called a baptismal font. We bless the water, and we pour the water over the child's head 3 times and say, I baptize you in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, which is the Christian way of articulating the one God. So after that, we celebrate the child as a full member of what we call the body of Christ, a mystical reality of being part of a communion that extends from heaven to earth. And that child is regarded as having been reborn spiritually in the grace of God. So that is the most significant celebration that we have when it comes to celebration of birth of a child.
Thank you. So we, on the 8th day for boys, we do circumcision. It's called Brit Milah, which is, people know it as a bris. Bris is just the Yiddish pronunciation of the word Brit. Brit means covenant. So it's the covenant of circumcision. And it is not the same, not a Brit Milah. And that gets somehow confused. Traditionally, on the 8th day, you have someone who has been trained. Right now, in the Boston area, most of the people who are trained to do a Brit Milah, bris, are doctors, so they also do circumcisions, but they have a ritual aspect, so they have all kind of blessings. And the truth is that the obligation is of the parents to circumcise their child, not of the doctor or the mohel, which is the name of the person who does circumcision. So usually the person doing will ask the parent, do you want to do it? And Yoni did it when he did it for his son who was running around here in that time. And a parent can do the circumcision itself. That is back to Abraham, what Abraham did in our tradition, to Isaac and to himself, and to Ishmael. Now, then the question is for girls, for many generations, there was not a lot of ritual for girls, and the only thing we had is what we call a baby naming, which is that at some point the parent will come to services on Shabbat and come up to the Torah, to the scripture, and a name will be given to the baby girl. That's people may have been invited to a baby naming. Of course, the circumcision ceremony also has a baby naming aspect in it. And traditionally, people do not name their children until that ritual. So I think differently, at least culturally, where I grew up in South America, and I think that here too, people already choose the names and name the baby even before they have been born. We don't say the name of the baby until the naming, which is 8th day letters for boys. I think for girls, has been a new movement to really rethink the ceremony, not to be just a giving of name, but really frame it as a welcoming to the covenant of the Jewish people, to the covenant of Abraham and Sarah. So in our community, and something I've been doing for all these years, I have 2 daughters, is a parallel ceremony, which parallel ideas and rituals without the part of the circumcision itself that have the same concepts, the concepts of welcoming to the covenant. So for example, many times in the ritual I do is we take a talit, which is the prayer shawl, and we wrap the baby in that prayer shawl or bring her close to the Torah and say some similar verses and rituals that we say during the circumcision. And I've been pushing very, very much. It's like it's one of my things that we don't say the boys get a bris because that means they have a covenant and the girls get a name. We all get a covenant. It is the rituals that we create are rituals of welcoming our children to the covenant of the Jewish people. When it comes to girls, some families are choosing to do it also in the 8th day, regardless, but there is a little more flexibility because a Sunday when the family can fly in is much easier than in a random Tuesday in the 8th day, which is what happens with a bris. You have to do it on an 8th day. Regardless, it's the only, unless health issues, of course, it's the only thing that even if the 8th day will fall on Shabbat, or the 8th day will fall on Yom Kippur, our sacred day, we will do it on that day. It's the only thing that you, if it health allows, you do it on the 8th day.
Thank you. Okay, so going to the opposite end of the life cycle, what are your faith's rituals surrounding the death of an adult? Manib, you want to start?
So in Islam, the funeral is a relatively quick affair. So my wife, who is Irish and who grew up Catholic, would always joke that being South Asian Muslim weddings are about 5 days long, and the funerals are really fast. Whereas for the Irish, the weddings are really fast and everybody's crying, and the funerals are a 5-day party. But in Islam, there are really, some 4 core things that happen. It does happen relatively quickly because in Islam, typically we don't embalm the body. So when the person passes away, they're given a ghusl, or a ritualistic washing. Then they are wrapped in a simple white cloth. Then there is a congregational prayer, janazah prayer, that's done for the person. And then they're buried with their face facing the Kaaba. So those are really the 4 core pieces, and they happen relatively quickly, again, because in Islam there is no preservation of the body.
I'll go because it's very similar, like what he said, but in Jewish. Really. First of all, in Jewish tradition, you are expected to bury your loved one as soon as possible. As soon as possible. It is understandable, especially when you have family far away, that we wait. But like more than 2 days. It's not like you do it as soon as possible. In Jerusalem is the only place of practice that you do funerals at night, even because you do not spend a night without burying your death. There is no waiting. And this comes from this idea of kivud amet, of honoring the death. This comes from that practice, that the best way to honor the person that has passed away is not to linger, but to really bring their body to burial as soon as possible. We also have a ritual called tahara, which is the cleansing of the body, where we have people, and I volunteer in our local Chevra Kadisha, our organization that does this work of cleansing ritually the body, and also dressing them with white tachrichim. We could go linguistic and we'll realize we're saying the same words in Arabic and in Hebrew. And we buried our death as possible, if we can, in the most simple pine coffin. Again, in the land of Israel, there is no coffin. You bury directly to the earth. And the only reason we bury in coffins in this country or outside is because of the law of the country. But traditionally, the idea is from dust you came, to dust you go. The less possible ornament, the better. Besides that, we have a lot of rituals that come after. Many, I'm sure, have been visiting for a Shiva, What is a Shiva? Shiva means 7. That's all what it means, is 7 days of mourning. Traditionally, the mourner sits in their home for 7 days, not going anywhere, and people come and visit them. In our modern America, we go for 2 hours twice, but in general, it's supposed to be 7 full days. And then we have Shloshim, 30 days of mourning, and then we have 11 months of mourning. We have markers of mourning throughout the whole year that help the mourner to go through this process. There is much more to say, but I think that there is a lot of similarities between Muslim and Jewish burial practices. Whenever I have been in Jewish or Muslims, it feels very familiar. Whenever I've been in a Christian, it feels much more unfamiliar in that sense. I think that's in a part that our practices are very, very different.
Yeah, thank you. In the church, there are basically 2 things that we can point to in terms of rituals. I mean, one is before the person passes away, if possible, we have an anointing with consecrated holy oil, and prayers are said for that person. And if possible, with the clergy there and the family and loved ones gathered around that person. After the person passes away, we usually hold a church service. It can be done with what's called a Eucharist or not. The Eucharist, which literally means Thanksgiving, it's a ritual where we bring bread and wine, and we believe that through the prayer of consecration, somehow the real presence of Christ is provided through those elements of bread and wine to the people who receive them. And this is a practice of receiving the grace of God in a very tangible manner. So a lot of funeral services will have the Eucharist as a part of our celebration. And when we have a service, technically it's a service of the resurrection. So you know that, I don't know if you do know, but I mean, in the Christian view of things, death is a step towards the final resurrection of the. So the celebration that we hold for the person, remembering his or her, their life, through the memories of their loved ones, that celebration is all, and grieving, all of that is done in the context of this final promise that God will give a life in a way that's beyond what we can imagine in its glory and in its joy at the end of time. Otherwise, there's so many other cultural elements, like some people, depending on their cultural background, will have wakes, right? And it can be an overnight usually. Like if you go to Korea, a wake is 3 days. So it depends on what kind of cultural background you're coming from and how you observe those practices.
What's interesting, I would note, is that in Islam as well, we believe death is this final step and that one day we will all be resurrected on the Day of Judgment. So that's a very interesting similarity. And Judaism as well. Very cool.
I don't like talking about it.
I would tell you all, in the interest of time, I'm going to scooch along through rituals, but there's so many more we could talk about. Fasting, because it's in all 3 religions. Also, I was going to potentially ask about the significance of marriage in each faith, but I'd like us to get to some other questions and then give you all the opportunity, if you have questions, to ask them. So our next section is really about how our faiths allow us to translate values into action. And the first question I would ask in that regard is, how does your faith understand the responsibility to care for others, especially the vulnerable? Who wants to go first?
So I love this question. I think it's very core. And what came to mind for me is I wanted to share a midrash, a rabbinic text teaching that I really love, and I think speaks to this. The rabbis in the Talmud, our rabbinic text, ask regarding a verse in the book of Deuteronomy where it says that we should walk after God. They ask, how can you walk after God? They literally don't understand. Does it mean we are going to physically walk after God and then they get a little scared. So like, God is fire, you will get burned. Like, you can't walk literally after God. So the Midrash says, no, that's not what it means. What it means is that we are going to follow God's example in the ways that God presents God's self in the world. Just pay attention. I never call God. Do you realize? Do you notice? He, never. God is God's self. Encourage people to try to think about God beyond gender. It's very good. It helps the soul, I promise you. So in this midrash, in this rabbinic text, the rabbi said the way that God dressed the naked in the story of the Genesis, when God gave clothing to Adam and Eve, you should dress the naked. And then it says the way that God visited the sick, which is the story of Abraham, which is one of the understanding what the angels come to visit Abraham, is just after the circumcision. So Abraham is a little sore, understandably. So God visits Abraham. The way that God visits Abraham when he is sick, you should visit the sick. The way that God buried the dead, and it talks about Moses being buried by God's self, before entering the land, you should bury the dead. And there are a few other examples. And what I love about this teaching, about this text, and I find it so core about what our tradition tells us, is that each of us as human beings are the hands of God. We are the manifestation of God in the world. This rabbinic text imagines God not like somewhere, this is why the he doesn't work, somewhere up there, sitting in the sky, deciding things for us. But God is out, down in the world, taking care of those who need food, taking care of those who don't have clothing, visiting the sick, burying the dead, really taking care of basic human needs. And God does that through us. That is what following God's path means. And for me, that is one of the core texts of how our faith, our Jewish tradition understand the idea that caring for one another is deeply being the manifestation of God in this world.
I don't want the microphone now. Yeah. No, that was really beautiful. Honestly, there's not much I can add to that. Like, you covered so much of what is common, amongst the Islamic and Jewish traditions, and I'm sure the Christian traditions as well. But I guess I'll say that there are a few parts in Islam. We talked about the first pillar being that of belief in one God and Muhammad as his messenger. We talked about salat and prayer, and we're all here breaking fast during Ramadan, which is the third pillar of Islam. And the fourth is zakat, or charity, and it's not an option. And I know Fariha talked about the video of 2.5% of all our savings. So, I mean, on its surface, that's just one piece of us, again, and me talking about all of these parts of faith being deeply personal, but also communal. Of course, the zakat and the charity is about helping the community, but it's more than that, right? It's a way of mind. There's a Quranic expression that talks about how the community is, or ummah, are all one. All of us together are one. And if there are any one parts of the body that are suffering or that die, the whole body dies. And so in its basic essence and its basic sense, humanity is all but one. There's no way that I could put it as beautifully as you did, Rabbi.
I want to say that the word sadak is the same word in Hebrew, it's tzedakah. For us, it's tzadik dalet kuf, and it's the same exact word about this idea that charity, but tzedakah, that comes from the word justice. So we don't do charity, but we do justice in the world.
Interesting you should say that. There are actually two words in Islam. One is zakat, which is a pillar of Islam and an obligation, and the other is sadaqah. Right? And the word sadaqah is more of the optional, and it exactly aligns to that.
It's not optional.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
I think the Christian tradition is very much resonant with both Islam and Judaism. Of course, we're heirs to the Jewish tradition, and so the prophetic, emphasis on doing justice in the world is at the core of Christian faith too. And Jesus is identified specifically as belonging to the lineage of the Hebrew prophets. And I think one thing that the way that our narrative talks about this in the Gospels is Christians believe that Jesus was God incarnate, right? And what Jesus does in the Gospels is to deliberately, as God, take the position of the victim. Okay? So God takes the position of the victim intentionally, out of solidarity. And how that translates into the practice of the community that follows Jesus is articulated very clearly in Matthew 25, the Gospel of Matthew chapter 25, when Jesus tells this parable about the Last Judgment, and all the people are gathered together in front of God, and God is dividing them into people who are going to go to heaven and people who are not going to go to heaven. And the basic difference is, did you feed the hungry? Did you clothe the naked? Did you visit the sick? Did you visit those who are in prison? And what Jesus says is, if you did that, you did it to me. So there's that radical identification that Jesus is making between himself and everybody who suffers. So if, for Christians, we do not follow the example that he set and his community set, by regarding the victims not as charity cases, but as in somehow mysterious revelations of God's own self, then we have violated our own commitment as Christians.
So this is the last question I'm going to ask the panelists. It's probably the hardest one. And unfortunately, we're not going to have time for Q&A, but I encourage you all to reach out to our wonderful panelists because we're racing against sundown if you have particular questions. But this one, I think, will give you, I really want through very troubling times. There has been an extreme rise in both anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hate in our country. And I say anti-Muslim hate because I do not care for the term Islamophobia. It implies something like arachnophobia, like it's a condition that it just exists. Anti-Muslim hate is an active thing, and it's the fear of harm and discrimination that both American Muslims and American Jews feel is palpable. We've discussed many ways in which our Abrahamic faiths share many of the same beliefs, values, and even rituals. But world events and how they've impacted our brethren abroad and our own innate fear response of protecting our own, of focusing on those of our own faith first when threats loom large, while understandable, has left us more siloed and even more divided as faith communities in America than I can recall in my lifetime. We're looking to you all here to help us. How can we come together in America, despite this climate, to stand up for kindness, compassion, and for helping those in need? Whether it's the impoverished, immigrants fearful of being separated from their families, people being discriminated against or punished because of their faith or another protected category, do you have tangible suggestions for building trust and cooperation among good people of different faiths or even no faith at all to help us unite to bring about positive change in this country or even in our town of Brookline to start?
Wow, that's an incredible question. I certainly don't want to make light of it, but I want to answer first because I do not want to be after these two. So this one is a really tough one. And I guess, as you pointed out, Masu, so accurately, we're living in a time where fear is very loud. It's all around us. And human nature, obviously, is when fearful, you pull yours and you together. You're approaching traffic and you're with your child. There is a fear. You bring your child in close. But I think if we're not careful, what can happen is that we can start to shrink our moral imagination. right? And what I mean by that is we can start thinking about doling out selective compassion, right? And it's up to us to be thinking about consciously how we prevent that from happening. So how can we prevent that from happening? Well, there is a short sentence in the Quran, loosely translated, that says, no matter how you feel about a people, do not be unjust. Because just and being just is closest to righteousness. So what are the actual things we can do? I think, first and foremost, show up for each other, right? I'm preaching, so to speak here, preaching to the choir, and that you've all come to this event. But I'll tell you, I had a conversation years ago once with somebody who said, why do you continue to do interfaith events when it's, of course, a pre-filtered group of people who are coming? But there's a difference between coming and showing up and being there for the people that are in this community. So I think that's the first thing. The second really falls into exactly your point, Rabbi, and your point earlier, Reverend, as well, about serving. No matter what the struggles are that we are facing, there are always those who are in greater need. And I think when we come together to serve the less fortunate, that's when some of those differences, right, which we should, of course, honor, but not let us divide. Serving helps bring those pieces together. And I guess the final piece of the puzzle, I would say, is let's treat language symmetrically. So when we see hate from one side, we need to call it out. When we're Muslim and we see anti-Muslim hate, when some congressman says that he would rather choose dogs over Muslims, we get offended. We outcry. But when some whack job on the religious panel spouts anti-Semitic words, we must also stand. So in that regard, I would say that's another piece of the puzzle.
Thank you so much, Winnie. That was really powerful, and I just wholeheartedly agree that there's a difference between coming and showing up and standing up for each other. I also think there's another aspect, like another dimension that to addressing this problem of anti-Semitism and anti-Islamic hatred. And I think that has to do with practicing actually coming together regularly and getting to know each other regularly as human beings. Interfaith is not, like, you don't get to know another religious tradition by saying, hi, I'm a Christian, nice to meet you, Islam, or nice to meet you, Judaism or Buddhism. It's people that are actually getting to know each other as people. And I think one of the things that that we all struggle with, because we're, evolutionary conditioned this way, is to get beyond the insider-outsider of our own tribal group and see people who are radically different from us as just like us. I think it's really that simple. And it takes a lot of work to do that. Because we're conditioned in so many ways, conscious and unconscious, to make those boundaries and make distinctions between you're this and I'm that, and we're not the same. And I think we have to find concrete ways of connecting and seeing each other as human beings, fully equal, fully made in the image of God, and learn from each other, our own faith traditions, our values, our family history, our stories. I'll just end by saying that there was this article by it was an Indian sociologist who said he was studying political and religious violence in India, and the question that he was asking was, why does religious violence flare up so much in certain parts of India and then less so in other parts of India? What's the factor, or what are the factors that determine the difference in the level of violence? And he identified that the single most important factor was whether a community had civic spaces where people from different backgrounds and religious traditions could get together on a regular basis. right? That was the single most important factor in alleviating religious and political violence. And we have to create those civic spaces here.
Thank you. I'm very moved by these answers and very much sharing what you both said. I want to talk about that building relationships, and I think that is what we are called to do. As I said before, we are all created in God's image, and what does it mean to truly lean into that and build relationship with one another, recognizing that our stories are different, that our narratives are different, to be able to listen with patience and not with righteousness. I know better, because my story is different than yours, and we see and read things differently. And that takes a lot of trust. So I want to give you an example, which is because we are here with a lot of my brothers and sisters from our Brookline Clergy Association, which Rana and Faiza are part of it. After October 7th, 2023, one of the first things I did was to pick up the phone and call Rana and Faiza. I think I did it 2 or 3 days after that. I was in horrible pain. My family lives in Israel. People I know were killed on October 7th. People that my family know were taken hostages on October 7th. But I knew that I needed to continue to build bridges with my Muslim friends here in Brookline and figure out how we were going to do that here locally. It was very profound. We cried together. Less than 2 weeks later, we met as a Brookline clergy, and as a Brookline clergy against anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hate in our town of Brookline. It was not an easy statement to write, believe me. It took us days, every word, because we did not agree with everything, especially at that point. The ways that we saw what was happening in Israel and in Gaza and Palestine was different. We had our differences. We still have our differences. But we knew that we were committed to be in community with one another and to listen to one another. And I can speak about my friendship with Faiza and Rana as an example of what does it mean to be committed to one another, even when we have looked at things in the news and read them differently. Because we understand that we are committed here to live together. Our children go to the same Brookline High School. We want Brookline High School to be a safe place for our children, for the Jews, for the Muslims, for the Christians, for all of them. So the commitment is to be able to be with one another, even when we disagree, even when we have a different story. And furthermore, if we are able to listen to the story of the other person and to stay there, even if it's uncomfortable. We live in a time where made me uncomfortable. I'm sorry, I'm leaving the room. We should learn how to be uncomfortable with one another. We should learn how to be uncomfortable with one another, with respect, with love, with understanding that we bring a different story. I feel incredibly, incredibly blessed that we are doing that at the Brookline Clergy Association, that we have been standing together for a lot of things. Not long ago, Faiza, Rana, and I were at the town meeting, the school committee meeting, talking about our holidays because they wanted to take away our holidays from the calendar. And we stood together as Jews and Muslims to talk about why our holidays were so important. So we have to really lean into getting to know each other, not be naive that getting to know each other is not going to be comfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable. I'm an Israeli. That makes some of you really uncomfortable right now in this room. I'm sure. But let's talk about it. Because I'm going to tell you that I've been working for years in peace work with Palestinians and Israelis. And I want Palestinians to have their own state and their own place side by side. But let's talk about it with respect, with love, with care, with understanding. I have to finish, says Faiza. Thank you. Whatever Faiza says, I do. So just to say, we have to lean in into getting to know each other in total honesty.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. We are at 5:25, so we are going to bear with me because we have a thank you, and then we're going to start breaking our fast. Thank you to our panelists.
Thank you. I had a long thank you, and I'm going to cut it really short. Thank you to everybody. Reverend Wanje, thank you, Rev Claudia. You are the best. Reverend Wanje, just a little something from Brookline Muslim Friends. So I want to mention two things. Adhan will be given by Munib, which is the call to prayers, and our teens are distributing the dates. Of course, sunset has happened. You are welcome to observe the prayers or move on to the food hall. Thank you for being here today. We are so appreciative. Thank you.
I did have a quick description about the adhan that I was going to share with everyone, but given the time, feel free to come up to me afterwards if you're interested in the origin of where the adhan originally came from. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر
Thank you so much for attending. This concludes our program. For any of the Muslims who would like to participate in prayer, we're going to be praying over here. You're welcome to observe if you would like. Otherwise, please proceed over here through those doors to the food area. Thank you so much for attending our program. You eat it now. You can eat.